We're going to talk a little obsession. So you only had a limited time to establish Nikki's look before the spell. What was the process of trying to define her look and also that awesome denim jacket?
Well, to help define her look, I really wanted this feeling of effortlessness. Like she wasn't trying to appeal to anyone. It was fully like to express herself and for comfort. And so I kind of did that with like blue tones and then like heavy layering, the drapery of the denim jacket, of course, with the like riding boots. But I just really wanted her to feel relatable to a mass group of people because I felt the more people could relate to her, the more they would love her and hold on to her as she transitioned throughout the spell per se. And the denim jacket, actually, it's a really funny story. My acting teacher, about a month before Obsession, like I got the job, he handed me a trash bag of clothes and he was like, hey, I don't use these anymore. Like you should just take them, maybe you'll use them. And inside that was the 1990s vintage Gap denim jacket that we ended up using in the film.
That's amazing. All right, so the spell happens. What was the process of then kind of deconstructing her character through costume as the spell, took more hold?
So originally Curry pitched to me to do like 1950s housewife, and I kind of like pushed against it, kind of being like, I think we can touch on that, but I think let's make this more drastic in the way of like kind of physically stripping things away from her. So like there were less layers, less jewelry, less individuality and creativity in her looks. They were more into the appeal of Bear and what she would think Bear wanted to see. So every time I was kind of creating a look, it was kind of like from an acting standpoint, like what's the new objective to get what I want? And when she wouldn't get something she wanted from Bear, like how would she physically alter herself to think that she could get something from him?
I was struck by the guys' night out party scene where she crashes the red dress.
Yes.
That was a pivotal moment, really, when the things kind of really unravel. What was your thought on costuming for that scene? And it was also, I thought, her best scene, like dramatically.
Yes. It's one of my favorite scenes of hers as well, yeah. The red top, I just really wanted to feel wild, feel drastic. And then originally I had pitched to do like low-rise baggy jeans, like very baggy jeans. And I was with a group of my guy friends, and one of them was like, wow, I really love when girls wear those little shorts. And I was like, oh my goodness, like that's literally the male gaze. Like that's what I should be. That's it. That's the thing that will really portray what I'm trying to get across with her altering herself physically to appeal to Bear. And so I switched it to those like small shorts, and then I did the like knee-high boots as like kind of a callback to Sarah's first costume, as if she's like slowly shifting herself to be and appear more like Sarah to get Bear's attention.
Yeah, I was struck by that. So that goes to the end where she does take on more Sarah traits, thinking that's what he wants. What was the process kind of at the end with her last costume, which does get a little bloody too?
So that part where she wears Sarah's costume or the dress was written into the script. And so it was more kind of like making sure the dress was perfect, not only for Sarah, but for Nikki as well. But the blood was crazy. That was my first time working on like that amount of blood and vomit and like everything involved. But it went well. I'm very grateful to our head of makeup and special effects, Ali Shehorn. She really held my hand during it and like helped me really figure it out. And I learned a lot through the experience.
Well, as someone in my real life that had the exact same spears Nikki had, you nailed it, because I went through that in my last relationship.
Oh, wow.
What was, so looking back, so we talked a lot about the cool scenes. Is there any one scene maybe you're most proud of, more of a subtle scene? We haven't talked about something that, the audience might not notice because it wasn't a big dramatic scene that you really were proud of from the costume-wise.
I love the scene where they're on the couch and they're watching TV and she looks at him and he turns her head towards back to the camera. I love that costume. We did that during reshoots, and I just thought the two-tone red was just stunning on her, and with the headband I just thought it was perfect, and I really feel like it pulled actually the whole movie together. It's such a short amount of time it's on screen, but I feel like it really pulled the transition between her before and her after. I really feel like it was that perfect middle piece that I was missing.
Euphoria finale.
Yes.
The gunfight.
Yeah.
Let's start at the beginning. How did you want to start with, you setting it up, Ali's coming in, we know he's going to die. Like basically you're telling the audience he's going to die. What was the process of setting up the dread before we actually get to the fight?
Yeah, there's so many sort of layers to this, and it's this kind of slow burn at first, right? Because he comes in, and at first you're like, wait, who is this? You know, so the first step is like we don't even show his face, right, as he's coming in, and so that's the first step. It's like, wait, is that Ali? Who is that? Who is that? And then all of a sudden you see him, and the stripper's kind of like talking with him, but he's like grabs her, right? And it's like, oh, he is serious. Like something is gonna bad. Like he's here for keeps, right? So that's like trying to ratchet it up, right? Ratchet that emotion up. And then again, you build up the tension, with the other actor comes in, G, this is Alamo's, kind of right-hand man, and that scene is all about ratcheting up the tension, and it's just like, what does he know? And then Ali keeps escalating, right? He's like under the table, right? And so you just keep adding emotion, adding tension and building, because and Alamo is behind the glass, right, with Maddie. And it's like, oh, well, when is he gonna find out, right? But Alamo doesn't find out until boom, right? G gets shot. And then Alamo jumps up and is like, what is gonna happen, right? So then you keep ratcheting up, and then you see Alamo's like, what's he gonna do? Alamo looks up at the bullhead, right? And then it's like, wait a second. And Maddie slides down. She's like, because she knows what's gonna happen, right? And then he's like, Ali is like, give me the, where's Alamo? Come out. And all of a sudden, crash, right? So it's just, in each of those moments, it's about making sure that each one feels like an escalation of emotion ratcheting up. And that's what the trick is, right?
And I like that scene because Maddie you've already said that Maddie's in danger.
Yeah.
He wants to have children with her.
I know.
It's creepy. But so for you, before Alamo comes on, which we'll talk about next, how was it for you making sure now you're showing Maddie and making the audience feel for Maddie the most?
Absolutely, yeah. And so those scenes with them inside the room, they're very intimate, and there's a kind of dread, actually, when they go into the room. It's the two of them, and Bishop is on the outside, and that's another interesting layer there, because Bishop and Maddie have some chemistry, right? So, but the door gets closed on Bishop, and Alamo, Maddie is basically trapped in there with Alamo. And Maddie's trying to keep it professional, and she's kind of just like, here's the money, here's your thing, I'm just gonna, And then suddenly Alamo, for the first time ever, gets kind of personal and gets kind of emotional, and you get to see a different side of him. But the problem is, it's still him, right? And even though he says all of these things, he wants, to have babies with her and do all these things, and it's like, oh, is he different? Has he changed? But then actions are louder than words, right? When the head crashes through, what does Alamo do? Grabs Maddie as a shield, right? Actions are louder, so he doesn't really care.
That was my best moment. Like creatively, that was amazing. You did that. But now you also established that he's willing to cheat. But we know Ali is not. So when you're setting up the gunfight, how did you want to play in the audience thinking one of them will honor the deal, wait for the bottle to drop, the other one's going to break it?
Yeah, and I made a very specific editing choice in that moment. So there's a moment when Alamo specifically says, and no cheating now, right? And so there's this one angle that they used, and it's from the side. So the camera is just right on the side. It's the side of Alamo and a shot from the side of Ali. And I only used those two shots for the cheating line. So in order, because that's such an unusual and special shot from the side that doesn't look like any other angle. So I saved it, and I only used it when Alamo is like, no cheating now. And I'm like, because you're right. Because that's what we're trying to build up, is like, well, of course he's going to cheat, right?
And then, of course, how was it then having the bottle roll, the old 12 o'clock clock, and ending with the awesome twist of Bishop actually saving Ali? What was the process like setting up with the clock, really, and then paying it off with that?
It was really fun, and I went and watched a bunch of old, duels, and kind of the ticking clocks. And I know there's the one movie where there's a stopwatch that has the little song, and when the song runs out, the duel happens, and so there's all these different versions of that. And I really loved playing with that moment, where the bottle's rolling. And there was one choice that I made actually in the music to really emphasize the bottle rolling. So the bottle rolls, and you hear it roll, and the music's building. But then as soon as the bottle goes into the air, I cut the music off completely. So it's just as the bottle is falling through the air, it's just silence. And you see Alamo and you see Ali. It's just silence, silence, smash, right? To emphasize that moment, right?
And then finally, the last shot
Yeah.
of the series.
Oh, yeah.
With Zendaya. How was that when you saw it emotionally? Because you've been on the journey with this too, with the film.
Yeah.
What was the experience like getting the payoff of that moment?
Unbelievable. I mean, every time, all the editors, we would sit and we would watch, the whole episode together, and we all cried every time. It was really devastating. It felt like we were losing a friend. This is somebody we have spent, years and years of our life with, and Rue just feels real to us, and we all loved her, and we all wished for her to have a happy ending. And it's devastating. It was heartbreaking, and we were all really, really emotional. 14 months before the show came out, I read the script and I cried for 2 days. Yeah.
Initially, what made you want to come on board Spider-Noir?
What made me want to come and work on Spider-Noir? I would say the script, for sure, and Nicolas Cage. It was great. I got the script, I loved it, I read it, I could totally see it. I understood what they wanted, what our showrunner, Oren, who wrote it, what he wanted. I thought, okay, I understand this. And then I knew it was Nicolas Cage, and I'm a huge fan of Nicolas Cage, who isn't? And I was like, this is a no-brainer.
Now, it kind of opens more film noirish. The style's more broken down there. What was the process of opening, trying to establish that kind of gritty noir world before you really introduce the superheroes?
Yeah, we worked on the opening a lot. Thanks for asking that. It was a big process to get to what you see in the pilot right now for the opening. So, because it combined so many different things, right? So it had black and white. It was Nicolas Cage voiceover, like a Sunset Boulevard style voiceover. So black and white noir leaning. Then it had Spider-Man swinging through the streets of New York and a ton of animation, right? And then it had live action of Nicolas Cage. So it was really a mashup of genres. So it proved that superheroes and noir can be genres that can work together, right? Which is basically what we tried to show for the whole 8 episodes. So this was really kind of like the litmus test that we did. So we really worked on it a lot to make sure that we could nail it. And that, it had action, it had emotion, it had a backstory. So I think it did a lot for the show in a very concise way, and felt really effective. And I think it set up his emotional journey, because at the heart of it, if you're not engaged with the characters and if you don't care about them, then it doesn't matter, right? It could be all a bunch of other stuff, but if you don't care, then, it doesn't matter.
Now, from an editing, pacing standpoint, it must have been challenging how to balance the superhero and the film noir.
Yeah.
Like when to pull, you don't want to do it too quickly, too drastic. What was the challenge of kind of like weaving in the superhero stuff so it doesn't kind of, overtake the noir?
For sure. And that's something that actually Oren, he talked about a lot too, because yes, of course, it's Spider-Man. That's what the project is, right? But also at the heart, it's Ben Reilly and it's Nicolas Cage, right? So you want to keep that, always the beating heart of that and what his emotional journey is. And so we did have Spider-Man parts, and we did talk about in terms of editing, maybe setting a little bit more noir pacing for times when we're with Nicolas Cage, when we're with Ben Reilly, right? But then when it's action and it's Spider-Man, an audience is more used to a traditional, a little bit more faster paced editing. So we were sort of cognizant of keeping both of those happening at the same time.
We have a lot of editing students that watch. So I'm curious, is there one scene in particular that you're most proud of? It could be more of a subtle scene that took a while to get, but you're really proud of, the editing students could study.
I mean, I would definitely say the opening, because that you can see the balance of everything. It's something that for sure editing students could study, just how when the voiceover started, when the lines come in, what images are happening at that time, when the score comes in, what the sound does, the rain and the fighting, and I would definitely say break that down. But I would also say I love the Rockefeller fight. At the end. Yeah. It's so fun, right? Because it's very, he's just walking to Rockefeller. So it's kind of, and there's score there, and it's kind of tense. And then you get to the top, and you're not quite sure exactly what's going to happen, right? It's a little bit slower. You're watching me standing on the edge, the wind, all the visual effects look great. But then it becomes something that's a nod to noir, right? It's funny. It's like you have the punch, and he like looks to camera, which is a very like kind of dated thing to do, but it's so fun. It makes it so wonderful. And then it becomes an action piece, and then it becomes the reveal of Sandman, right? So it's like it becomes this modern day thing, and then he gets thrown off the building, and you see him make the decision to come back and be Spider-Man again. So it's just, I feel like it has a great arc, an emotional arc with him. Nick was wonderful in it. So just, I feel like it's such an interesting sequence.
The Boys. You had a lot going on this season. What was the biggest challenge going into this season, kind of, because you're ending it, but biggest challenge, for the season for you evolving?
Yeah, you're right. It, not only last season, but going out on its own terms, which is really cool to work on because we know that creatively going in, this is the end. So I would say the biggest challenge was, as you work on season after season, you want to keep pushing creatively and changing and evolving. And when you get to something that you know is your fifth and final season, at what point do you keep pushing and evolving, and what point do you start referencing, at what point does the crowd or, the fans want to hear that thing that you've done a few times? And so I think we were constantly navigating that all the way up through the finale.
Now, Homelander had a unique arc. Most people don't end as God. What was the probably arcing him out and giving him his final kind of character journey?
I mean, first of all, I have to say credit to the writers, right? Because they're the ones that thought of all this crazy, awesome stuff. Like, gosh, it's so well written. Anyways, so yes, it's hard to take too much credit for Homelander's arc. From a music standpoint, there was a lot of referencing. His sound did change a lot of seasons. There was the season where he had I don't know how gross we can get, but the gray pubes. And point being, he started to consider his own mortality, and that had its own sound. But a lot of this one was back to that classic violin motif that a lot of people are familiar with.
Now you have some send-offs, beloved characters dying. How did you want to approach that, kind of giving them, because we have big action scenes, we have awesome scenes, but at the same time we have real emotional trauma. Well, how did you want to balance that, especially when you're doing some of your beloved characters sending off?
That's a fantastic question. It's incredibly difficult because you want to empathize with the scene that you're writing for, right? And make sure that you're engrossed in it. But I'm not scoring the scene because of Matt Bowen's emotion. And that was a challenge during this whole fifth season, but the finale in particular. It was like, okay, how much am I bringing my own baggage, not baggage, but like emotion to this, and is that too much? It was a challenge to say goodbye to those characters, and some of the send-offs were so beautifully shot and beautifully acted that the most appropriate thing to do was to actually play it dry. And so there was quite a few send-offs that were just so striking that we said, we agreed with Kripke, who's the showrunner, this no score on this.
Okay, Paradise.
Yes.
We'll go back to Paradise. What was it about Paradise that made you want to come on board initially?
So Jean-Lweckworth and Glenn Ficarra, they're two of the executive producers and some of the directors. I worked with them like 10 years ago prior to another project. So when they start doing something, I get interested, and they gave me an email. They're all, what are you doing? I'm all, I don't know. What are we doing? Let's do it. So, but literally from reading the first script, it's one of those ones that I was looking through the pages and I wasn't seeing a whole lot of visual effects, and I was all, okay, maybe this is kind of a slow burn, kind of a mystery. And then you get to the last couple of pages of the script, you're all, okay, I get it now. I see why the visual effects will be needed. So.
All right, so we have kind of two different worlds, the bunker world. Yes. What was it? What was the process? What were the challenges of creating that bunker world look?
So when we're on the interior of the bunker, basically, we built the whole city in CG. So we pulled big wide shots. We built the cities, the schools, the town center. This big, there's this mountain, this fake mountain that wreaths the entire scene. We built all that. But when we're on location and practical locations, our job is just to kind of fill in just little things in the background that kind of give hints to those worlds, because we shot in a lot of locations around Los Angeles, but with the production design and those little CG extensions here and there, just really kind of tied that world into our CG world.
Now, conversely, you have another world, the apocalyptic world. What was the challenge of kind of creating that different world?
Yeah, I mean, the first challenge was, again, when the scripts came out, we're like, oh, so we just spent all this time building paradise. Now we're going outside of this. So, on one hand, it's like, so what is that going to be? And I think they wanted something. The showrunners and basically everybody wanted something a little unique. There's a lot of post-apocalyptic things out there right now. We wanted ours to kind of stand out, and I think one of the ways we did that was kind of the scale of some of these things. Like when you come to the bunker door, we wanted it to be this big towering thing, and we shot that at a location in Pyramid Lake, and it's literally, we had a green screen and two small parts of the opening doors, and we basically the whole hillside and the big opening doors we ended up doing it in visual effects in post, and it was one of those things that once we finally got it in the shots, we're all right, this is looking good. It's got the scale that we want.
Is there any scene you're most particularly proud of? It could be a small, subtle scene, but one that really stood out for you. Maybe it was challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a scene in season 2 where our character Sinatra, she's pretty much resigned to the fact that she's going down with the ship. So she's just this slow walk through the downtown of Paradise City, and all these panels from the ceiling come cascading down and break around her, and it's just kind of this great moment because the cinematography, the visual effects, the location, everything kind of came together, and it was just one of those moments that when it all came together, and I saw with the score and the color correction, it was like, okay, that all came together. Like all the different disciplines got to shine on that one.
What was it about One Piece that initially drew you to the project?
Well, I heard, this is going back a ways, but I had a friend who was, he was one of the producers, writers of the show, Matt Owens, and I worked with him on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I had a long history with him, and we always got along really well. Whenever I had one of his episodes that he wrote, I thought, it's going to be great. And I heard, this is around the time, right before the pandemic began, I heard he was doing a show called One Piece. I wasn't super familiar with the content. I was a comic book kid growing up. Batman, Superman, and things of that nature. And somehow One Piece got by me. And I heard about the show, I looked into it, and I went, that's a big swing. That's really, I'm not sure about this one. But it kept gnawing at me. I was interested in it. So I started looking into it, I started reading about it, and I went, wow, this is really cool. And he and I started talking, and he says, yeah, I want to get you on the show, and I'd love to do that. And then the pandemic happened, and it was quiet for a little bit. I thought it went away, and then a few years later, I get a call, hey, we'd like to bring you onto the show. Oh, great. And when you start reading the scripts and what they were intending to do, you're like, I mean, they're really going for it. And they're going for it in a big way. And this can go in either direction. And obviously season 1 was received really, really well. Huge viewership. And season 2 only got bigger.
All right, so we have a lot of editing students that watch. What one scene are you most proud of? Maybe the one that was most difficult to pull off. Could be a smaller, intimate scene that you were like, wow, we pulled this off.
Well, there's a few scenes. I always talk about Reverse Mountain. That one was just fun in general because of the collaboration, figuring out the shots, discussing with the previs editors, discussing with the visual effects department, music, sound, and keeping the stakes high. But the one that I don't talk about too often, but I think was a lot of fun and an interesting experience was in episode 5, Wax On, Wax Off. We have a sequence at the end where some of our straw hats are encased in wax on the candelabra, which is this big giant cake structure that's spewing out wax, and it's slowly encasing them. And Luffy and Usopp are trying to rush to their aid. And then we have this big fight sequence that happens with the Straw Hats trying to defeat Baroque Works. And the way it was scripted and shot was this fight, then this fight, then this fight. And it was all good, and everything was working, but it became a little like, okay, for some reason the stakes aren't really here right now. I'm feeling a little, the pace is slowing down. So somebody said, is there a way to intercut these fight sequences? Is there a way to make this, take each aspect of this fight and keep building on top of each other. Keep raising the stakes, keep raising the pace, keep raising the tension. And again, I had no musical background at all. I couldn't tell you anything about music, but the way we were looking at it was, rhythm, like the rhythm of music, the rhythm of the song. And we would figure out transitions to get us in and out of these fights, so that if we left the fight with maybe Zorro and Mr. Five, we wanted to feel like, well, maybe Zorro was in trouble, and it's a cliffhanger. And then when we come back, well, okay, now I got to play catch up, and it keeps the audience engaged, and ultimately we keep building to which, and I'm going to use the only musical term I know, the crescendo, and once they defeat it, okay, we can release the tension now, and it was just a lot of fun to put that sequence together, and again, it was when somebody says, well, the secret, often an early cut, the secret really isn't working, I'm not quite sure why. As an editor, that's when I get excited, because you start to figure out interesting, creative ways to solve these problems, and it's always done through editing.
So you just came off moderating a panel.
Yes, my first panel ever. It's crazy. Oh my God.
What did you enjoy most, being able to talk craft with the costume designers, editors, so many different types of artists?
Just kind of like seeing them all say their answers, and then just kind of seeing how they all cohesively work together within their own fields. It just kind of made me realize that it really is all about community and working together at the end of the day, on whether it's like film or TV. So that was really cool to.
All right, so panels are challenging too, though, because you have to balance, making sure everybody what were the challenges, and making sure everybody had their time to shine, and kind of integrating the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this panel, we actually had like an amazing group of panelists, because we all talked before. They were all really nice, really great, and it was just really easy bouncing off of each other. So it actually wasn't too challenging. Yeah.
Now, for me, one of your panels, I had personal experience with Obsession, because I had the exact same thing happen to me, and I was Nikki in my real life. How fun was it actually to talk Obsession and costume and Nikki?
Oh my gosh! Honestly, hearing because we got to talk to the person that works behind costuming, with Blair, who is amazing. But just hearing how much costuming does really shift the story of Obsession and how meaningful it is in driving that story was so cool to hear in person.